Let's bring in right now political strategist and pollster Frank Luntz. He recently led a focus group with one-time Trump voters to get their thoughts on the former president and the man who could be Trump's biggest obstacle in reclaiming the Republican Party's nomination in 2024. That is, of course, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So, Frank, tell us about the focus group. What were you looking for? What did you hear?
Well, first, we wanted to gather Trump voters, and many of these people had voted for Trump twice. Everyone had voted for him at least in 2016 or 2020. And we wanted to know where they stood now that he's announced, now that it looks like the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, will be his opponent. We wanted to know how they felt about the man who they used to idolize. And you know what? They still do, but not the same as they used to. It's changed.
Well, you asked a group of the Republican voters to briefly describe Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Let's take a look to see what they had to say.
First, one word or phrase that you would use to describe Donald Trump right now.
Stay off Twitter.
Jamie from Iowa.
I was just going to say the same thing. His new one that he's on, I think he needs to take a break from that one.
Becky.
A narcissist.
Lisa.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Andrew.
Tired.
John.
Unsettling.
Melody.
High hopes.
Marie.
Mistake.
John from North Dakota.
Unrelenting.
Kathy.
Still right.
Eric.
Divisive.
Jim.
Overdone.
John from Georgia.
Fighter.
David from California.
Racist.
Jeff from Texas.
Sanctimonious.
Stacy from Indiana.
Businessman.
Nancy from Illinois.
Calculated.
I'm going to do the same thing now with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. I'm going to go in the exact opposite order.
Promising.
Stacy from Indiana.
Oh, geez. Interesting.
Jeff from Texas.
Badass.
Kathy from Pennsylvania.
A leader.
Eric from North Carolina.
Hopeful.
Jim from Indiana.
Rising.
John David from Georgia.
I say the same thing. Fighter.
David from California.
Promising.
Andrew from South Carolina.
Leader.
John from California.
Visionary.
Melody from Washington.
Amazing.
Marie from New York.
The future.
John from North Dakota.
No apologies.
Lisa from New York.
Gutsy.
Becky from Virginia.
Future of the party.
Jamie from Iowa.
Refreshing leader.
Gregory from Nevada.
Future of the party.
So, Frank, we got some very different responses there. When DeSantis was being asked about it, was all positive. Some words like promising, interesting, visionary, the future. Trump, there were some positives, fighter, unrelenting, still right, but also things like unsettling, narcissist, stay off of Twitter, divisive, racist. What does that tell you?
They're tired. They still appreciate him. They still think he was a great president. That hasn't changed. But they now look at him and they say, why all this chaos? Why all this fussing and fighting? Isn't there a better way? And frankly, a lot of them are angry at him for the candidates that he supported and his lack of support for them when they needed it most. Go take a look, and this is something we've not talked about, how much money Trump raised in 2022 and how much actually went to the candidates. If you tell Republican Trump voters that he raised over $100 million and donated only 15% of that or less to those candidates, they get angry. Trump voters are fed up with all the Trump-focused hysteria, and they want someone different, and they see Ron DeSantis at this point as being different.
You know, Jen Psaki, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about establishment Republicans turning on Donald Trump. And for Donald Trump, that really doesn't mean too much. I tell you, I gave a speech following the midterm election. A lot of Republicans came up to me who were Trump supporters, voted for him twice. They're exhausted. Like Frank said, they're exhausted. And then when they start talking about the fact that Mitch McConnell, gave hundreds of millions of dollars, Donald Trump sat on his money, they do get angry. And we think a lot of times that people aren't as focused on some of these. They are. And the base is focused. And that's spreading around, internet like wildfire, that Trump had all this money, kept it to himself, let these candidates lose.
Yeah, I mean, these words that came up in these focus groups, which is why they're so interesting, are so starkly different, Joe, right? I mean, you have Trump, as Frank said, as you said, everyone is basically saying they're exhausted, they're tired. The thematics around DeSantis are, he is promising, two people use that, visionary, the future, so much hope in that. I wanted to ask you, Frank, you've done a lot of these focus groups at this point in advance of a presidential primary. Were there any concerns that came up from these participants about DeSantis? And what is your gut here on kind of what DeSantis's path forward is in the primary, given their responses?
Well, we even have polling data. Premise, the polling firm asked the question directly of Republican voters: who would you prefer, Trump or DeSantis? And it's a dead heat. So it's not just in focus groups. In survey research, things have changed. They don't know enough about DeSantis to be all in with him, but they like what they see. They also note that he's willing to take on entrenched interests, which is what they appreciated about Trump, and they think he's a very good communicator, which is essential. The devil's always in the details, and once he becomes a candidate, then things could change. My advice to him would be, take your time. There is no rush. We all know who Donald Trump is. He's going to have all these different mind meld moments, all these different meltdowns. You don't have to get involved in that. And for the other candidates that are looking, Tim Scott, Chris Christie, the Republicans have a very strong bench, and we're not talking about them right now. All we're focused on is every single week, this Trump vote gets smaller and smaller as they become more and more frustrated with him and his behavior, his persona. And I think that's going to continue.
Certainly time is on the side of DeSantis and other potential challengers. Frank Luntz, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Jen Psaki, as always, great to have you here.